Namaste, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bharat Varta podcast. We're about a year away from the Bengal elections. Mamata Banerjee and her Trinamool Congress have been in power for about a decade now and won the last elections pretty convincingly with nearly 45% of the vote share. In the same elections, the left parties led by CPIM, which ruled the state for about 3 decades, followed with about 20% of the vote share. Uh, BJP hasn't been historically strong in the state, but it has made tremendous progress in recent times. And in the 2019 general elections, won 40% of the vote share and got 18 seats from the state. So aside from this, we have the Indian National Congress as well as another key player in the mix. There are plenty of factors in play at this point. Aside from the coronavirus pandemic plaguing the state and the country, uh, the state has experienced the devastation of Cyclone Amphan recently, and there is also the backdrop of things like the CAA and NRC. To discuss what will be an interesting battle for power in Bengal, we have a stellar lineup of speakers on this episode of the Bharat Varta podcast. We have Abhishek Paul, Rohit Jayaraman, and Rangesh Sridhar joining us today, all of whom you've heard before on previous podcasts, speak about social, political, and economic issues. So can't wait to get started on this. Welcome, Abhishek, Rohit, and Rangesh. Glad to have you on the podcast. Rohit, let me start with something that I mentioned in passing in the introduction, which is the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. How did BJP manage to pull off this win? And how much of a factor do you think it will be in the upcoming elections?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Carrie. I think it's very relevant to really understand what happened in 2019 if you really want to look at, the 2021 elections with any real context. So just to lay the facts out, right, as in, it's always good when you talk about politics to have some sort of numbers. What really happened was it was a pretty big change from 2014. And I would say in the case of the BJP, a real historical change in the sense that while the Trinamool retained pole position with 22 Lok Sabha seats and around 43 to 44% of the vote, the BJP came from around 2 seats, I think, to 18, and a massive vote share increased from around 17%, I think, to 40%, which is like pretty big. Now, what really happened in 2019 is an interesting question, right? And this ties into how things moved even in 2014. So in 2014, when the BJP was new to the whole thing about Modi wave, and there was an expectation of victory, etc., there was some sort of focus should be given to Bengal as compared to the past, even though it had not really been a good state for the BJP. And the party did do well, and while everyone expected a victory in Darjeeling, Babul Supriyo winning Asansol and a bunch of other reasonable performances clearly showed that BJP had the potential in Bengal. And what happened after that is very interesting, because right from then they had this whole idea that they would need some new seats to make up for losses in 2019 from your Hindi heartland, because as we all know, the BJP had sort of swept the Hindi heartland in 2014. And while that obviously didn't really play out that way in 2019, they put a lot of effort in Bengal. Not so much in the assembly elections of 2016. And that probably was a tactical decision which made sense, because there was a real chance at that time that, or at least potential that, the left Congress alliance might actually defeat Mamata Banerjee. And if that had happened, it would have really set the BJP back a long way. So they sort of made a tactical retreat in 2016, came out all guns blazing in 2019. Now, how did it happen? I would say there were 2-3 things, right? If you look at where the BJP won its seats in 2019, and where the TMC won, you sort of look at it on a map, you'll see that except for a few odd seats here and there, and especially in, some of the minority-dominated seats in Murshidabad, etc. The TMC really got most of its seats from the southeast part of the state. That's Kolkata and its surroundings, which have historically been where Mamata Banerjee drew her entire support from. While BJP sort of got almost all the seats in the northern part of the state, even in the western part of the state, right? So it's clear geographical pattern here. And if you look at it again, that's based on, these are the places where there are more number of tribals, even Dalits, and generally more rural areas of Bengal. So it was really some way sort of the BJP tapping into a lot of subaltern identities in Bengal, not something that people traditionally associate with the BJP in a lot of other states. And that way, I think that's something which is very interesting about Bengal, and one would probably want to look at it more even during this podcast.
Right. Very interesting perspective. And, since then, much has happened, right, with the CAA and the NRC as well. Rangesh, I mean, your thoughts on this?
Before we delve into that, I'd like to add a few points to what Rohit spoke about what happened in 2019. And 2019 was a watershed moment for Bengal. And which is why it probably pays to spend some more time on this before we move on to what happened since. 2-3 other things which I would like to cover, which a bulk of it was covered by Rohit. There are certain other points which I believe needs emphasis in explaining the results of the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. One of which is the complete crashing of the left party's infrastructure and of the Congress party, except for those 3-4 districts in North Central Bengal. And this has a background to it, because in the 2016 elections, these two parties did have a tactical alliance against Mamata Banerjee, and which kind of exposed them to their own traditional vote banks, which were antithetical historically. Which I mean by which I mean the vote banks of the INC and the left parties, which eventually led to the weakening of both these outfits. One. Second, it emboldened Mamata Banerjee to kind of do what she feels is right, regardless of the changing equations on the ground. Because after the 2016 elections, she emerged with a monster majority and was clearly the tallest leader in the state without any parallel. She still is, by the way. And she kind of soon realized that a lot of her victory, the scale of her victory in 2016 also got to do with some subtle shift in the Muslim vote bank, which she wanted to completely capitalize, and realizing that once she has control over this 28-30% of vote in the state, she would just need 14 to 15% of aggregate vote to stay in power or even sweep elections, right? It's between 2016 to 19 that you see very ferociously, pro-Muslim Mamata, who was seen to be pandering to the mullah class, and allegedly was seen by a lot of Bengali Hindus, even middle class Kolkata ones, of pandering to criminal elements within the minority community. All of this happened in the past 3 years. It was never something that she associated herself with. That was not her vote bank, but it somehow came to be in her mind space. She convinced herself that once you lock in the minority vote, you're set for next 10 years of rule in the state. That kind of triggered a lot of reactions in North Bengal, and to a large extent, in Central Bengal, in areas where, even though the BJP didn't win, it substantially increased its vote share in the Muslim majority districts of Central Bengal, right? If you look at the results, if you analyze the results in details, in its detail of the 2019 elections, in North Bengal, it was a completely Hindu-Muslim election, right? You can whittle down the Lok Sabha leads into assembly leads, and you can clearly see those who have done this analysis would tell you that BJP was able to lock in the Hindu vote in a one-sided manner, and that is how it came very close to winning a Muslim majority seat of Malda Dakshin, which is a 70% Muslim majority seat, and BJP almost won it because there was a vertical division in the vote share between the between the TMC and the Congress, right? And this kind of polarization happened, because of the strong activities of the Sangh in North Bengal, apart from, of course, the one-sided pandering, communal pandering and appeasement of the Mamata Banerjee government. The second thing that she did was somehow she dropped the ball on the backward and tribal communities of Jungle Mahal, who were one of her stepping stones to success in 2011. One should recollect here the success of the Lalgarh movement, in which she openly sided with the subaltern classes, quote unquote, of the Jungle Mahal area of west and southwest Bengal. And somehow she kind of dropped the ball on that. And the Sangh replaced kind of the Naxal elements in terms of social service organizations and social provision organizations in the districts of Purulia, Jhargram, Pakuda, and so on and so forth. And it reaped heavy dividends for the party in the 2019 elections, right? So these two things are that one needs to very clearly remember that they occupy into two lacuna that Mamata Banerjee left. One is the polarization, which was a logical conclusion of her appeasement, and second is her dropping of the ball on the subaltern communities in one of the poorest areas of Bengal, which is the Jungle Mahal area. And BJP swiftly kind of occupied that space, which also explains why they did exceedingly well here, while they couldn't do that well in other areas where there are a fairly good number of Hindus, and there is a fairly good chance of polarization as well. But they couldn't do that because there wasn't the equation, or there wasn't the lacuna left by the TMC in these places. Now, coming to the current situation, right? Ever since the 2019 elections got over, I think the scale of the results weren't a shock to, the scale of the results were probably a shock to Mamata. But I don't think, I believe that she is a fairly grounded politician who understands the pulse of the people. I don't think she must have missed the drift, but I think even the scale of the result was a surprise even to her. But ever since then, and some attribute it wrongly or rightly to Prashant Kishore's intervention, she has made some subtle changes in her approach towards both politics and governance. For one, there is a marked improvement in her public posturing, as well as in her trying to resist throwing tantrums in public. One. Second, covert appeasement of minority community has really come down a lot. It in fact was at next to nil, according to many observers, until the CAA protests came in. But it had started, strongly going down. In fact, she made a lot of token changes. She removed Firad Hakim from the Tarakeshwar board. She, she kind of stoned down her pro-Muslim rhetoric. Third, she started quoting a lot of these subaltern communities with direct transfer schemes, as well as through symbolic gestures to them, like dancing in there, going to their festivals, dancing in them, and also on and so forth. Right? So she has tried to rectify whatever was the lacuna in her public as well as political image. Apart from that, what has also happened is that in the Jungle Mahal area, which is today one of the biggest catchment areas for the BJP apart from North Bengal, and where they did poll they polled a majority of the tribal votes in the Panchayat elections and the run-up to the Lok Sabha elections, but they did also poll a sizable vote of the Santals in the 2019 elections. There allegedly is a movement away from the BJP among certain sections of Santals. It was already there in the 2019 elections. You could see because of the impact in neighboring Jharkhand, you could see that the leads in Santhal-dominated booths and in Santhal-dominated ACs is far less compared to, say, the booths and the areas dominated by the other big community there called the Kurmi Mahatos, right? And this is a lacuna, this is a fault line that the TMC has sought to exploit by kind of, cutting into the BJP's umbrella Hindu alliance in Jungle Mahal. That is one thing that has happened. The second thing that has also happened is that one also sees a clear narrative being spawned by the TMC around Mamta, saying that there is no response, there is no answer for Mamta in BJP. So it's basically asking the BJP, whom do you have in response to her, right? So pushing them to announce a CM face. That is the second thing that's happening. The third thing that's happening ever since then, ever since the elections, is that the BJP came up with the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment, which was earlier a bill, and then it was enacted into a law, the Citizenship Amendment Act. The Citizenship Amendment Act is seen by many people through, in many lenses, right? So many have questioned, even in the BJP ecosystem or the right-wing leaning ecosystem, have asked what is the utility of it? Why is it needed at this stage, at this point in time? What is the emergency of it, right? But all of this makes sense only when you understand the importance of CAA from the perspective and standpoint of the Bengali Hindus of East India, both in Bengal as well as in Assam, right? And only when you understand it from their standpoint, and only when you understand the importance of this group in BJP's larger scheme of things in both Assam and Bengal, would you be able to appreciate the importance of the CAB and why it was brought in with such urgency and emergency, right? In Assam, the BJP had given a word on the NRC, and NRC became a huge issue because of certain, because of the results of the court-ordered NRC, right? And there was a genuine fear among Bengali Hindus of East Bengali origin, who are, I think, Abhishek should probably correct me if I'm wrong, are at least a crore, if not more, in West Bengal today, and form a bulk of the population in the Greater Calcutta region, and are a huge catchment area for the BJP. They earlier used to be with the CPM, and today they are a potential vote bank for the BJP, right?
Right.
Without some kind of a safeguard for them, right? And NRC would have spelled disaster for BJP in Bengal, as it would have for the BJP in those parts of Assam, like Silchar, where Bengalis are in huge numbers, right? And it would also kind of push into a fear psychosis those communities like the Matavas and the Namashudras who back the BJP. So that is the reason why they had to bring in CAA to assuage these feelings. And my understanding is that the CAA has gone down very well in Bengal. Of course, it's an entirely an armchair analysis, but it's based on my understanding of the various community relations and group dynamics in Bengal. But I think CAA has politically benefited the BJP in Bengal. One. Two, it has forced Mamta to do something which she has been resisting since the Lok Sabha results, which is to take an overtly pro-Muslim stance.
Okay.
That she did for the first time during the CAA protests ever since the Lok Sabha results. She had to take, because it was a question of life and death for her party also. Right?
So,
and then,
sorry,
just one more minute, and I'll just
go ahead.
And then once the CAA stopped, you had the whole Corona issue, right? Now there is a school of thought which says that the CAA played badly in the urban parts of Calcutta, and that the CAA and that TMC gained out of it. Even if there was some truth in it, what COVID and the Amphan has done is to destroy, that chance and leeway for TMC as well. I think COVID and its mismanagement by the Bengal government has provided an opportunity for the BJP today to break into an area which was hitherto close to it, which was until now close to it, which is the Greater Calcutta region, which includes North and South Calcutta, PC, Barasat, Hooghly, Howrah, Srirampur, and so on and so forth. About close to about 100 to 110 ACs, if I'm not wrong. This was an area where the BJP got helped in the Lok Sabha, and where they were finding it difficult to penetrate, where the left was refusing to die. And it is an area where now they have gotten a clear entry, I believe, because of the mishandling of the COVID by Mamta. And I would like to stop my comments for now at this point in time.
Okay, Rangesh, that was fairly elaborate. Uh, I mean, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned that, Mamata Banerjee is not afraid to polarize at this point of time. In fact, I mean, she has continued to play to her strengths per se, right? Abhishek, I want to come to you and talk to you about her in a little more detail. She's been a vocal critic of the Prime Minister and has, not been afraid to say that, say pretty controversial things as well, right? What do you think her line of attack is going to be? I mean, do you think she's going to continue on the same lines?
Sure, thanks, Gary. So, just to sort of look at the game from the Trinamool Congress and Mamata Banerjee's point of view, I think and I'll probably be repeating a number of things which Rangesh has already covered since he covered it so comprehensively. I think there are a few things, right, which are kind of still in her favor or her plus points, right? So, starting with her name and her dominant personality on the Bengal electoral scene. She's like a larger than life figure in Bengal. There is basically no one that the BJP has to take her on one. What works for or worked for the BJP in, let's say, 2019 or to some extent 2014 as well, where their vote share was quite good, was Narendra Modi's name on basically the ballot, right? Because we were voting for a prime minister. So BJP has always punched above its weight in Bengal in the national elections, even before the massive improvement in 2019. But when it comes to assembly elections, Mamta definitely has a big advantage in terms of her name and her sort of dominant presence on the whole scene, right? So BJP would struggle to put up a CM candidate if at all they go that route. And basically, in a sense, this is the same theme that we have seen in other state elections as well, where a Kejriwal gets obliterated in the Lok Sabha election, but does much better and often and wins the assembly election, right? So Mamta's name itself is like a big selling point for her party. Secondly, TMC is basically a non-ideological party per se, right? So it began as an anti-communist party, but basically is on the same sort of socio-economic front, right? It is a left populist party, and it has been, running certain, development schemes, welfare schemes, with kind of mixed kind of success, right? So whether it basically it took over the state government machinery from CPM and has managed it not quite in such a organized manner, but still done that. Or say if you look at the urban areas of Kolkata or other towns, it's through the whole clubs, the Pada clubs through which TMC kind of rules the roost there, right? Thirdly, of course, with a 30% or thereabouts Muslim vote base in Bengal, and TMC has kind of managed to completely take that under its fold, right? So, apart from certain pockets of Malda where the Congress is still alive, the Muslim vote will pretty much go to the TMC, right? So that is in its pocket. We all know about the various stories of appeasement, etc. The next point I'd probably say, and this is a theme which the TMC has sort of started to play up more and more as the BJP has kind of gotten stronger and become the preeminent sort of opposition, and that is the theme of Bengali sub-nationalism, right? So ever since the times of CPM, right, there has been a sort of strain in Bengal politics where the politicians would try to say that they are going up against say the Sultanate of Delhi, right, the center, and while it was kind of limited to some extent with CPM. Now with BJP coming in, so the BJP is basically painted as a Hindi-speaking North Indian party or outsiders to Bengal, and so this whole Bengali versus all Bengali or Bengali versus all Bengali, as it's called, or the whole Delhi versus Kolkata card will be played, and it kind of gets played on various themes, right? So small incidents are sort of really magnified. So if you would recall the 2019 elections, and probably just before the last phase or the second last phase, there was this incident where a statue of Vidyasagar, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, was kind of damaged in College Street in Calcutta, right? And so the whole thing sort of was played out by PMC and the Bengali media favoring it as these lumpen people from outside the state, or these lumpen Hindi walas have come in and demolished an icon of ours, right? We really don't know what actually happened, but the results after that seem to suggest that it kind of helped PMC and disturb the BJP's momentum to some extent. So this whole Bengali sub-nationalism element will keep getting played. We'll also see the same thing in terms of the response to Amphan, which was briefly touched upon by Rangesh, right? So while in the national, those of us following the national media would say that Modi responded very quickly, right, and was on the ground very soon after the incident. How it has got played out, at least in the liberal intellectual circles of Kolkata, is that the rest of India is totally ignoring us. What Modi is giving is just a pittance. There will be sort of facetious comparisons of 3,000 crores on a Sardar Patel statue versus 1,000 crores on a once in a lifetime cyclone that has damaged Bengal. So the whole sort of image and discussion that is getting played around in at least TMC favoring circles is that here is once again another thing, another instance where the rest of India and BJP are basically ignoring us. They don't really have our best interests in mind.
Right.
In between all this, the big setback to Mamta in the public perception has been her rather poor response to the whole COVID scenario, right? In terms of lack of transparency. And by now, I guess almost everyone has personal sort of cases or stories where someone they know has been unfortunately impacted by this rather poor handling. So this is where the sort of TMC is right now. I think going up to or leading up to the sort of next election, Mamta will definitely not take it lightly. If you see the last sort of 4-5 elections in Bengal, she has almost a base of about 39-40% vote share, which is a very, very strong base to start off. And my sense is that what Mamta will probably try to do is, use people like Prashant Kishore, etc., to just about target a narrow sort of victory over a very resurgent or very upcoming BJP. It will be a very sort of closely fought affair, and I think TMC's game plan would be to just sort of get over the line. With that, I'll stop here.
Right. Interesting. So one other thing to consider is also 2011 when the left was wiped out. There was a cyclone in 2009, Cyclone Aila, right, preceding it. So will Cyclone Amphan sort of act as a precursor to a possible, defeat in the elections? Is something to, mull about. Rohit, do you want to talk about some of these threads? I mean, including the, pandemic situation right now not being handled in the most optimal way, and plus the devastation of the cyclone. How will the opposition parties play this up, and how will Mamta Banerjee sort of respond to these going forward?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Carrie. So I'll just take up some of these threads that Rangesh and Abhishek were talking about. So I think one of the interesting ones that Abhishek was talking about was this whole sub-nationalism thing, right? Because Now, when something like a cyclone or any natural disaster happens, even something like a pandemic, what eventually happens is either people are satisfied with the response of the administration or people are dissatisfied, and this tone sort of gets, set very early. Like, for all you know, if your first 5 days of response are bad, you can do all sorts of things over the next 8 months, and nobody will really care about it, and vice versa. So, to that extent, this whole thing has been about really getting your narrative in, whether it's sub-nationalism on the part of Trinamool Congress or general inefficiency on the part of BJP and possibly the other opposition parties. I haven't really seen much from them, but practically that's how it works. So, in terms of the sub-nationalism, I think a lot of the non-Hindi speaking states in India have this sort of, what would you call, your intelligentsia, right? And all of them, paint the BJP in the same light. Now, in some cases, it started long back, like I think the whole Delhi Bengal thing, which Abhishek was talking about, probably started even from the time of Subhash Chandra Bose leaving the Congress, right, in 1939 or 1940. Since then, Bengal has been sort of outside the national political scene in some form or the other. Similar thing exists in Maharashtra, which, I mean, for centuries has had a tradition of being anti-Delhi. Then more recent ones, of course, for the whole Dravidian ideology in Tamil Nadu. And I mean, even in states where these kind of things haven't really had a long purchase, like some place like Karnataka, the intelligentsia always finds this a good narrative to at least try and use against the BJP. What invariably happens in a large number of these cases, though, is that it doesn't really have the kind of purchase that the people who are trying to use it think it will have, especially among the common people. And that's where I think Bengal is a very, very interesting case, because Bengal is one state where, at least in the cities, this whole thing that BJP is not their party actually works. Because just to give a very number-based example, right? Like 2 seats where BJP did not really improve at all between 2014 and 2019. Interestingly, in Bengal were the 2 seats in Calcutta. And that's sort of against the trend of how the BJP does in any new state. Like the BJP, when it started going in Karnataka, started doing well in Bangalore. When the BJP fought alone in Maharashtra, for the first time, it did really well in Mumbai, it did well in Pune, another big city. Even in a place like Telangana, BJP has always been strong in, the Hyderabad region. It's quite surprising that Bengal is one place where this movement has really happened in the rural areas and not so much in the urban areas. So I think at least in holding on to that base that Mamata Banerjee probably had in 2019, because again, she did much better in Greater Calcutta, as we were just discussing. This whole narrative might actually work to some extent. On the pandemic, I'm not so sure how things will really play out over a period of time, because I mean, as we have seen, different states have performed at different levels. The level of intensity in the terms of the national response and how people are reacting to it probably might even change once in a few months or something, because already there's this whole thing on migrant workers going on and something like that. But that's something that I think may not be as this thing as the cyclone. I think, that's a couple of the threads I wanted to take up. These guys are saying.
All right, Abhishek, I want to come to you with sort of an ending question, which is if you were, let's say, Mamata Banerjee or the opposition parties, what would your strategy be like going forward? What are 3 or 4 things that you will prioritize?
Sure. So I think one thing we've not kind of touched upon so far in the discussion, and I feel that's kind of crucial, is the whole law and order situation in Bengal. So I think all of our viewers will recall that from 2016 onwards, there have been a few major communal riots that have taken place in Bengal, starting with the Malda riots that took place, with the whole Kamlesh Tiwari incident which had happened. And since then, there have been, riots in Dhulagarh, Baduria, some small sort of incidents in Asansol, and recently, even during the whole COVID situation, the Teleni-Pada case. And so what happens is that we've talked about communal polarization, but basically, to some extent, uh, the credibility of the state government also keeps reducing to some extent with each sort of major riot, where people who are, you could say, fence sitters, who are not really, very hard Trinamool supporters, probably they keep losing a small chunk with each incident, especially and more as it sort of hits closer to Calcutta. So I think for Mamta, it's essential that she's able to maintain her control on the law and order, and also the whole narrative around it, in terms of the broader narrative about uh, her being seen as totally being appeasing the minorities. The other thing, which the big card, as I said right at the start, was they'll keep sort of pushing and probing the BJP on various grievances that they have, right? So whether it is funds for Ampam or any subsequent issues that come up. So basically, they'll keep playing the anti-card versus center, and also sort of try to provoke the BJP on the leadership question. A sort of Mamta versus a Dilip Ghosh sort of contest probably suits her more, and so they'll try to sort of push that card. At the same time, they'll sort of continue using their contacts or the dominance they have in the local media, even the local English media like the Telegraph, right, which is sort of completely one-sided in being against BJP and Modi. So they'll try to use that influence to secure their sort of position in the greater Kolkata area, among the Bhadralok community, as it were. And sort of finally, basically also do some sort of social engineering in places where they can, right, which Rangesh has alluded to and will probably talk about, right? So this is broadly the theme for TMC. Coming to BJP, they are on a pretty good, strong wicket. They have the momentum behind them. 2021 is probably like a once in a lifetime opportunity, right, to bring West Bengal also into their fold. And I think the victory that they had in Tripura holds a sort of lot of relevance here in terms of the lessons that they can take, right? So the way in which they were able to sort of capture the imagination of Bengali Hindus in Tripura itself was a sort of big achievement, and they will be trying their best to sort of localize the message, right? So the Ma Mati Manush of Trinamool is going to be sort of combated with their slogan like Aar Noy Mamta, for which people like Babul Supriyo had a song which went really viral, right? So they'll try to localize the message, make Bengalis sort of feel comfortable that they're also a Bengali party, and basically they have the sort of subaltern vote bank with them, and that is something that has to be sort of retained and topped up with a few gains if possible in Kolkata, right? So there was a sort of statistics that I was looking at where the 2019 sort of vote share, if converted into assembly seats, would mean TMC at 164 and BJP at about 121, right? So they're basically about 25 seats short, or which needs to be built upon. And Kolkata area basically provides an opportunity for them to grow. So if they don't make major gaffes, and basically the campaign goes well, there is a decent chance that BJP could sort of go over the line, but it will be very close, is what I feel.
Sure, interesting. Same question to you, Rohit. What do you see happening from now to 2021?
Yeah, so I would want to take a bet on what's going to actually happen, but I think I just focus on some of the things I think that both the main contenders will do / should do, ideally in my view, to make sure that they're in a pole position when 2021 actually comes through. And again, I think Abhishek spoke a fair bit about the TMC. I think the thing with the TMC is pretty clear, because for them, clearly they will get a very, very large portion of the minority vote, which in Bengal is pretty substantial, coming in at around 27 to 30%. And once you say even get around 22%, 23% from that, you really need to get only 15 to 18% in what overall would be some sort of a three-cornered assembly election, even if however weak the Congress / left are, to really do well. So to that extent, I think for Trinamool, it's mostly about cutting losses from even 2019, forget 2016, and being on the defensive. Of course, they will definitely try being on the offensive about some of these issues, whether it's subnationalism, not enough funds being given on account of COVID. That's definitely going to be a thing that every non-BJP state government has been raking up. So it's definitely going to be an issue for Trinamool also. From the BJP's perspective, I think, as Abhishek was mentioning previously, BJP in Bengal, like many other states, literally every state, has always done a bit better in Lok Sabha, bit or substantially better in Lok Sabha elections than assembly elections. And it's going to be a massive task for the party to sort of cut that gap down, because obviously they'll have to do that if they're going to really have any chance of winning against a fairly well mobilized opposite ruling party like the Trinamool. And there are two things here, right? One is that it's just easier in a Lok Sabha election to get rid of your organizational deficiencies, your things like your booth management and stuff like that, which is where a party that doesn't have a long-term presence on the ground, which is the case for the BJP in Bengal, really might find it just more difficult in an assembly election. The other thing, of course, is that in the Lok Sabha election, you had Mr. Modi as a face of the BJP, and you had Mamata Banerjee for the Trinamool, who I don't think even the most optimistic Trinamool supporters this time, unlike 2014, was really thinking was going to be the Prime Minister. So that way, that whole face thing went totally in favor of the BJP. It's going to be exactly the opposite in 2021, with Mamata Banerjee very much being the incumbent, the clear chief ministerial face. And I mean, BJP is in this position where even if they make somebody the chief ministerial face, that'll probably be counterproductive, because I don't think anyone really has that popularity to challenge Mamata to that extent. And accordingly, you will have to, they will have to take on Mamata from a negative this thing, which I think they're already on by using a slogan like "Aar Noi Mamata," where they are sort of, they're not afraid to really take the challenge to her. So that's something that BJP is clear, but BJP really would need to focus on both organization as well as try and make up for this lack of leader by greater focus on, like, they'll just have to put in that extra effort, because they won't have that kicker that they get in a Lok Sabha election. And here I think one good comparison would be what, like, similar things of course happened in UP in 2017. The BJP was a dead dormant party which had suddenly done really well in 2014, because up against a supposedly popular chief minister in Akhilesh Yadav, didn't really have any chief ministerial candidate. Obviously we all know what happened there. The obvious counter to that, of course, is the BJP in Bengal is nowhere close to the BJP in UP historically. But something similar to the extent it can be done is, of course, what the BJP should be looking at. Coming to the Congress and the left as the third and fourth players interchangeably in Bengal today, both parties have serious issues because the left totally lost its anti-Trinamool base because of its alliance with the Congress, as Rangesh mentioned, and withered away last time. And the Congress, of course, in Bengal has survived primarily as a party of the Muslim community in a few districts, which actually turned out to be quite counterproductive in the Lok Sabha elections, because there was a huge amount of vote splitting in some of these constituencies, which nearly allowed the BJP to win in certain places, right? Like, I mean, apart from the example Rangesh gave, even in a place like Raiganj, right, where like if it was probably the Muslim vote wasn't so split, it may not have been so easy. Like the BJP may not have pulled through. Congress needs to be clear on how it will affect, how will it be able to handle this feeling among Muslims, probably that it might just be make more sense to back Mamta at least this time to block the BJP. So long, at least in this election, I think it'll be difficult for both the left and the Congress to sort of
Right.
become relevant.
That's a fairly comprehensive answer. Rangesh, I'm going to come to you and let you have the last word on this. What would the strategy be going forward for Mamata and the opposition parties?
I think Abhishek and Rohit between them have comprehensively covered most of it, close to 80% of the 90% of the answer. In fact, I would just focus on 2-3 things which I feel needs to be looked at. One is that from Mamta's perspective, she would definitely be looking at a grand alliance with the left if necessary, but definitely with the Congress. An alliance with the Congress is going to seal close to 20 to 30 seats for the alliance over the BJP in about 5 to 6 seats of North Bengal, where the BJP has scraped through at assembly segment levels because of division, because of local loyalties, very strong, fairly reasonably strong leadership. The Congress is a force to reckon with in certain Muslim majority areas of North Bengal. So she would definitely try to close that gap. One. Second, the left still retains a lot of what I would call the ideological vote bank around Jadavpur area, around say Dum Dum, Barasat, the greater Calcutta regions, which are close to about 15 to 20 seats, where they have an ideological vote which will not shift to the BJP. And I don't see this vote also not shifting to TMC if an alliance happens, because then it can always be portrayed as an alliance against fascist forces. So it makes perfect sense for Mamata to go for a grand alliance. And I think it makes perfect sense for the Congress to accept that grand alliance, but I'm not sure if it is in the interest of the left to do so. That covers pretty much the left's and Congress's relevance as far as these elections are concerned. I think the BJP, as far as the BJP is concerned, they have to take a few calls. One of the calls, apart from whatever else that Abhishek and Rohit have commented upon, is to answer the question, should they or should they not reject a CM face, right? There are obvious, negatives to not going without a CM face, as they saw in Odisha. But Naveen Patnaik is not Mamata Banerjee. Naveen Patnaik kind of made good all the negatives of his cadre and his party machinery in Odisha, but Mamata only compounds the negativities of her party and her party machinery. That said, she's also her party's biggest strength, right? So they have to take a call as to would they be willing to run this as a purely anti-incumbency campaign, or would they take a risk of naming a person now, giving that person not even a year to contend with, and opening that person to comparisons and vicious attacks by the TMC, as would be expected from any rival worthy of a sort. That is will depend on how BJP resolves this particular issue. And to add to what Abhishek said, I think BJP definitely would want to reevaluate its strategy in South Bengal, especially in the greater Calcutta region, where it will definitely be attacked on being an outsider, on being a Hindu party, and I think to a reasonable success. how BJP handles this, how they handle, the CM face question, and how they handle induction of new leaders will answer how able will they be to beat the TMC in 2021. I would just take 2 minutes to expand on the last point. The BJP has expanded, by a large part due to lateral inductions from the left and to some extent the TMC in other parts of the state. And here in South Bengal, they have to do it at, starting from the booth level right until the parliamentary constituency level, they'll have to do it. Especially in the Greater Calcutta region, they will have to do it. And one of the biggest strong areas, apart from the Greater Calcutta region, is what is called the Midnapur district, which is controlled by a TMC minister, probably the only one in the cabinet who has a mind of his own, called Shubhendu Adhikari. How BJP leverages him, how they leverage his rivalry with Abhishek Banerjee, Mamata Banerjee's nephew, will kind of set the stage for the fight in 2021.
Fantastic. So I think that's a great note to end the podcast on. We've gone into depths, talking about various facets about the election. Some really fascinating insights. We hope you enjoyed this. Thank you everyone for tuning in to listen to this episode. If you really like it, please subscribe and share. Bharat Varta is available on Anchor.fm, Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and a bunch of other platforms. So until next time, please stay safe and take care of yourselves. Jai Hind.